So there I was, minding my own business in the Outer Rim, when the Galactic Medical Consortium decided they absolutely had to get their slimy appendages on a live human specimen. Because apparently we're the galaxy's most fascinating mystery. Who knew? When Dr. Vex Krimbolt, the consortium's chief administrator, stood before his assembled team like a discount Napoleon with tentacles. His species, the Zeltharians, were known for two things: bureaucracy and an unhealthy obsession with paperwork. Colleagues, he announced, waving his official clipboard, we have received authorization for live human acquisition and immediate dissection. Enter Dr. Niala Thresh, the galaxy's most celebrated surgeon. Picture a 7-foot-tall praying mantis who went to medical school and developed a god complex. Her forearms moved with practiced precision as she prepped her instruments, each one looking more medieval than the last. Finally she clicked, her voice carrying that special kind of arrogance reserved for doctors who've never been wrong. A chance to unlock the secrets of human durability. The capture mission fell to Captain Brix Noddle, whose security record was about as impressive as a wet paper towel. He was a Blorbanian, which meant he looked like someone had inflated a potato and given it legs. His team managed to intercept my supply ship through what I can only assume was pure dumb luck. Greetings, human, Noddle wheezed as his crew dragged me aboard their vessel. You are now property of the Galactic Medical Consortium. Well, that's just fantastic, I replied, taking in my captors. I was wondering when my day would get weird. Though I've got to say, your interior decorator has really committed to the ominous space dungeon aesthetic. Dr. Thresh examined me through the containment field like I was a particularly interesting bug. Remarkable, she muttered. The specimen shows no signs of distress despite capture. Specimen? I laughed. Lady, I've had worse Monday mornings than this. Though I appreciate the upgrade from coach seating. The medical bay buzzed with activity as various alien species prepared for what they clearly considered the scientific event of the century. Lab techs scurried around with instruments that looked like they belonged in a torture museum, while Dr. Thresh reviewed her dissection notes with the enthusiasm of a kid on Christmas morning. Begin preliminary scans, she ordered, her compound eyes gleaming. But I want to know everything about this creature's biological makeup before we commence the procedure. I settled back in my restraints, watching the chaos unfold. You know, I called out, if you wanted to learn about human biology, you could have just asked nicely. Most of us are pretty chatty about our medical problems. It's like a hobby. Dr. Thresh paused, tilting her insectoid head. The specimen demonstrates unexpected cognitive complexity. The specimen has a name, Doc. It's Jake Morrison. And I've got to tell you, your bedside manner could use some work. The preliminary examination began with all the subtlety of a freight train collision. Dr. Thresh approached with her scanning equipment, flanked by a nervous lab assistant named Pip Corbel. Pip belonged to a species that looked like someone had crossed a ferret with a worried accountant, and he lived up to both halves of that description. Initiating bioscan sequence, Dr. Thresh announced, running her devices over my restrained form. Pip, record all anomalous readings. Doctor, Pip squeaked, his whiskers twitching anxiously. The readings are all anomalous. His cellular structure doesn't match any known patterns. I watched their instruments with professional curiosity. Those are some interesting toys you've got there. Though if you're trying to get accurate readings, you might want to recalibrate that neural scanner. The frequency looks off by about 15%. Dr. Thresh's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. How could you possibly know that? Trade secret, I grinned. But seriously, when's the last time you ran diagnostics on this equipment? That cardiovascular monitor hasn't been properly calibrated in months, judging by the drift pattern. Pip's fur stood on end. Doctor, how does it know about our equipment? He, I corrected. Pronouns aren't that hard, furball. And I know because I've worked with similar tech. Your medical equipment is actually pretty impressive, though a few generations behind what we use on Earth. Dr. Thresh set down her scanner, studying me with new interest. You claim familiarity with medical technology? Claim nothing. I can tell from here that you've got a chronic inflammation in your left thoracic cavity, probably from an old injury that wasn't treated properly. And Pip there has early signs of metabolic dysfunction, likely from too much stress and not enough sleep. Classic symptoms. The lab fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Pip clutched his tablet closer to his chest. It can see inside us? Basic observation, really. Your species displays physical symptoms differently than humans, but the patterns are similar. Take Dr. Thresh here, the way she favors her right side when reaching for instruments, the slight discoloration in her exoskeleton segments, the occasional pause when taking deep breaths, textbook presentation. Dr. Thresh's mandibles clicked nervously. That's remarkably accurate. But how could a primitive species possess such diagnostic capabilities? Primitive? I laughed. Doc, I hate to break it to you, but humans have been practicing medicine for a few thousand years. We're pretty good at it by now. Impossible, she insisted, but her voice carried less certainty than before. Our intelligence reports clearly indicate humans are barely above the barbaric stage of development. Your intelligence reports might need an update. Tell me, what's your success rate for thoracic procedures involving Zeltharian physiology? Because from what I can see of your surgical setup, you're using techniques that we abandoned decades ago. Pip whispered urgently to Dr. Thresh, Doctor, should we continue with the dissection? The specimen seems to know more about medicine than our briefings suggested. The human demonstrates unexpected knowledge, she admitted, but this only makes the dissection more valuable. Imagine what we could learn from studying such an advanced neural structure. I watched them debate my fate with detached amusement. You know, if you really want to learn about human medicine, I could just tell you. Save everyone a lot of trouble. Dr. Thresh approached again, this time without her instruments. You would share your knowledge freely? Sure, why not? Professional courtesy. Though I'd prefer to keep my organs where they are, if it's all the same to you. The examination continued, but the dynamic had shifted. Instead of treating me like a specimen, Dr. Thresh began asking questions like I was a colleague. Her scientific curiosity was clearly warring with her original mission, and curiosity was winning. So let me get this straight, I said as Dr. Thresh ran her fourth set of scans. You captured me to study human medicine, but you've never actually talked to a human before. The consortium's xenobiology department determined that direct communication would compromise the scientific integrity of our research, she replied, though she sounded less convinced than before. Right. Because nothing says scientific integrity like kidnapping your research subjects. Very ethical approach you've got there. Pip nervously adjusted his data pad. Doctor, perhaps we should inform Administrator Krimbolt about these developments. Not yet, Dr. Thresh said quickly. We need to gather more data first. I leaned forward as much as my restraints allowed. Data about what exactly? Human medicine? Because I've got news for you. I'm not just familiar with medical technology. I am medical technology. Dr. Jake Morrison, trauma surgeon, University of Chicago Medical Center. 12 years of emergency medicine, specializing in complex surgical procedures. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop in the vacuum of space. You're a physician? Dr. Thresh whispered. Bingo. And from what I've observed of your medical bay, you're about to dissect someone who could probably teach your entire surgical staff a few things. Dr. Thresh's compound eyes widened. Impossible. Our intelligence clearly indicated that humans possess only rudimentary medical knowledge. Your intelligence is about as reliable as Captain Noddle's security protocols. Speaking of which, how exactly did that potato with legs manage to capture a human ship? We were informed it was a primitive cargo vessel, Pip offered weakly. It was a medical supply transport. I was delivering surgical equipment to a frontier colony, equipment that's probably more advanced than half the stuff you've got in here. Dr. Thresh began pacing, her forearms gesticulating wildly. This changes everything. If humans possess advanced medical knowledge, then the dissection could be considered. Murder? I suggested helpfully. Yeah, that thought occurred to me too. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the medical bay. Pip's tablet lit up with urgent notifications. Doctor, emergency in Section 7. Administrator Crimbold has collapsed. Dr. Thresh grabbed her emergency kit. What are his symptoms? Severe abdominal distress, elevated temperature, and he's been vomiting for the past hour, Pip reported, reading from his screen. I watched Dr. Thresh's reaction and saw the uncertainty in her movements. Doc, based on those symptoms and Crimbold's species physiology, you're looking at either acute poisoning or internal blockage. Time's a factor here. She paused at the doorway. How could you possibly know that? Because I've treated similar cases. Different species, same basic principles. You want to save his life, or do you want to stick to protocol? Dr. Thresh stared at me for a long moment, then made a decision that would change everything. Pip, release the restraints. Doctor, that's highly irregular. So is letting our administrator die while we have a qualified physician in custody. Release him. Release him. As the energy fields dissipated, I stretched my arms and stood up. Thanks, Doc. Now, let's go save your boss's life. Consider it a professional consultation. We rushed through the corridors towards Section 7, Dr. Thresh struggling to keep up with my longer strides. You would help us? After we kidnapped you? Lady, I took an oath to do no harm. That doesn't come with species restrictions. Administrator Crimbold was in bad shape. The Zeltharian lay curled on his office floor, his tentacles writhing in obvious distress while his usual grayish skin had taken on an alarming purple hue. How long has he been like this? I asked, kneeling beside him while Dr. Thresh hovered anxiously. About 3 hours, Captain Noddle wheezed from the corner. He was complaining about stomach pain after lunch, then just collapsed. I examined Crimbold quickly, noting his symptoms and vital signs. Classic presentation of intestinal obstruction. In humans, we'd call it a bowel blockage, but given Zeltharian anatomy, I looked up at Dr. Thresh. When's the last time he molted? Her mandibles clicked in surprise. How did you know Zeltharians molt? Basic xenobiology. Most species with exoskeletons do. And if I'm right, he's got shed material blocking his digestive tract. It happens sometimes when the internal molting process doesn't complete properly. That's exactly what our scans would show, she admitted. But the surgical procedure to correct it is extremely delicate. One wrong move and you could perforate his digestive system. Yeah, I get it. Lucky for him, I've performed similar procedures on species with comparable anatomy. Dr. Thresh stared at me. You have? Frontier medicine, Doc. You learn to adapt, or you lose patience. Now, do you want to argue about my qualifications, or do you want to prep for surgery? 30 minutes later, we were in the main surgical suite. I had to admit, their equipment was impressive, even if their techniques were outdated. Dr. Thresh assisted while Pip monitored vitals, both watching my every move with fascination. Scalpel, I said, extending my hand. Dr. Thresh placed the alien equivalent in my palm. Now, the key here is to make the initial incision along the natural segmentation line. See how the exoskeleton has these subtle ridges? Yes, but our standard protocol calls for a perpendicular approach. Your standard protocol will leave him with unnecessary scar tissue and a higher chance of complications. Trust me on this one. As I worked, I explained each step, turning the emergency surgery into an impromptu teaching session. Dr. Thresh absorbed every word, her scientific mind cataloging the differences between human and consortium medical techniques. "The precision is remarkable," she murmured as I carefully extracted the blockage. "Your manual dexterity is far superior to our standard procedures." "It's not about dexterity, Doc. It's about understanding the patient. Every species has its unique characteristics, but the fundamentals of surgery remain the same. Respect the anatomy, minimize trauma, and always have a backup plan." 2 hours later, Administrator Crimbolt was stable and recovering. His vital signs had returned to normal, and the purple tinge was fading from his skin. Dr. Thresh stared at the surgical site in amazement. "The incision is barely visible," she whispered. "Our usual procedures would have left significant scarring. Different approach, better outcome. It's what happens when you focus on the patient instead of just following protocol." Captain Noddle shuffled nervously in the corner. "So, what do we do with the human now?" The original orders were for immediate dissection. Dr. Thresh and I exchanged glances. "I think," she said slowly, "that we need to reevaluate our understanding of human capabilities." Over the next few days, I found myself in the peculiar situation of being a prisoner who was also the most sought-after medical consultant on the station. Dr. Thresh had quietly reassigned me to extended observation, which meant I got to roam the medical bay freely while she peppered me with questions about human surgical techniques. "The way you handled the vascular repair yesterday," she said, reviewing footage of my work, "it's completely contrary to established consortium methods, yet the results were superior." "That's because consortium methods are about 50 years behind current practice. You guys have been so focused on standardization that you've forgotten to innovate." Pip looked up from his tablet. "The patient recovery rates have improved 30% since the human arrived." "His name is Jake," Dr. Thresh corrected automatically, then caught herself. "I mean Dr. Morrison." I was making rounds, checking on patients I'd helped treat, when the opportunity I'd been waiting for finally presented itself. The station's main computer terminal was located in the medical bay, ostensibly for patient record management. But I'd noticed it was also connected to the security and navigation systems. "Hey Doc," I called to Dr. Thresh, "your computer's showing some concerning diagnostic errors. Mind if I take a look?" She waved absently, focused on her research. "Of course, Dr. Morrison. Your technical insights have been invaluable." What she didn't realize was that I'd been studying the station's systems for days, mapping security protocols and identifying weaknesses. The medical computer's access permissions were surprisingly broad, probably because no one expected a prisoner to have legitimate reasons to use it. I spent 20 minutes appearing to run diagnostics while actually uploading a virus I'd designed to gradually disable non-essential systems. Nothing dangerous. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but enough to create the chaos I needed for an escape. The first sign of trouble came when the lights in Section C began flickering. Then the environmental controls in the detention area started cycling randomly. Captain Noddle's voice crackled over the intercom. "Attention all personnel. We're experiencing minor technical difficulties. Maintenance teams report to your assigned sectors." Dr. Thresh looked up from her work. "Jake, are you seeing any irregularities in the medical systems?" "Just minor fluctuations," I lied smoothly. "Probably related to the power grid issues. Nothing to worry about." 20 minutes later, half the station was in controlled chaos. Security doors were randomly locking and unlocking. The cafeteria's food dispensers were producing nothing but green slush, and Captain Noddle was running around trying to coordinate repairs with his usual level of competence. "I don't understand it," Pip squeaked, staring at his malfunctioning tablet. "All the systems are failing simultaneously." "Cascade failure," I explained helpfully. "When one system goes down, it can trigger problems in connected systems. Very common in older installations." Dr. Thresh was growing suspicious. "Jake, these failures seem awfully convenient." "Doc, I'm hurt." Are you suggesting I'd sabotage your station just to escape? What kind of doctor do you think I am? The kind who took an oath to do no harm, she said slowly, but didn't specify to whom. Before I could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the medical bay. The detention cells had unlocked automatically, releasing every specimen the consortium had been studying. Captain Noddle's panicked voice echoed through the corridors, Code 7. All specimens have escaped containment. This is not a drill. I turned to Dr. Thresh with my most innocent expression. Well, this is awkward. She stared at me for a long moment, then began to laugh. Not the clicking mandible sound I'd expected, but genuine laughter that was remarkably human in its tone. You magnificent bastard. You've been planning this the entire time. Guilty as charged. Though in my defense, you were planning to dissect me. The chaos outside was reaching peak levels. Through the medical bay's windows, I could see various alien creatures wandering the corridors, looking as confused as Captain Noddle's security team. None of them were dangerous. The consortium only captured sentient species for study, but they were certainly disrupting operations. Dr. Thresh made a decision that surprised both of us. The escape pods are in Section F, she said quietly. Corridor access will be clear for approximately 10 minutes while security deals with the specimens. Doc, are you helping me escape? She looked at me with all four eyes. Dr. Morrison, in the past week, you've revolutionized our medical practices, saved our administrator's life, and shown me what ethical medicine actually looks like. The least I can do is make sure you don't get dissected for your trouble. 6 months later, Administrator Krimbolt sat in his rebuilt office, staring at the latest intelligence reports with growing bewilderment. The repairs to the station had been completed weeks ago, but one problem remained unsolved, Doctor. Nyla Thresh had vanished. Sir, Captain Noddle wheezed as he delivered his daily security briefing. We've received another sighting report. Another one. Krimbolt's tentacles twitched with annoyance. Where this time? The Kepler Medical Conference on Earth. 3 separate witnesses reported seeing Dr. Thresh presenting a paper on advanced surgical techniques alongside a human physician. Krimbolt reviewed the file with mounting disbelief. Since Dr. Thresh's disappearance, there had been dozens of similar reports. The galaxy's most celebrated surgeon, apparently working as a partner in a human medical practice. It was impossible. It was unprecedented. It was, unfortunately, probably true. Sir, Noddle continued, intelligence also reports that human medical technology has advanced significantly in recent months. Apparently, they've developed new surgical procedures that are being adopted by medical facilities across the galaxy. Let me guess, Krimbolt sighed. Procedures that bear a striking resemblance to Dr. Thresh's techniques modified for multi-species application. How did you know, sir? Krimbolt pulled up the official report on his computer screen. According to consortium records, Dr. Thresh had simply walked out of the medical bay during the chaos of the Great Specimen escape and never returned. Her laboratory had been cleaned out, her research notes downloaded, and her personal effects removed with surgical precision. The irony wasn't lost on him. They'd captured a human to study advanced medicine, only to lose their best surgeon to the very species they'd intended to dissect. Sir, Noddle said hesitantly, what should I put in my official report? Krimbolt considered his options. He could admit that they'd been outsmarted by a primitive species, that their most valuable medical asset had defected to work with humans, and that their intelligence about Earth had been catastrophically wrong. Or he could classify the entire incident and pretend it never happened. Mark the case as ongoing investigation, he decided. And Captain Noddle? Yes, sir. No more human capture missions. Apparently they're more trouble than they're worth. Meanwhile, in a small medical clinic in Chicago, Dr. Jake Morrison was finishing his morning rounds when his partner knocked on his office door. Jake, called Dr. Nyla Thresh, her 4 arms managing patient files with impressive efficiency, your 9 o'clock is here. The one with the unusual cranial trauma from the mining accident. Thanks, Nyella. How's the adaptation to human medical protocols going? Fascinating, she replied, her mandibles clicking with amusement. Though I still can't believe you were going to let them dissect you just to prove a point about human medicine. Jake grinned. Hey, it worked, didn't it? Though I have to admit, I never expected you to quit the consortium to come work on Earth. Dr. Morrison, she said, using the formal address that had become their private joke, when you meet someone who can revolutionize your entire understanding of medicine, you don't let bureaucracy get in the way. Besides, human medical ethics are far more interesting than consortium protocols. Plus, the coffee here is better. Much better. Though I still don't understand why humans insist on drinking it at such extreme temperatures. Outside their clinic, the sign read Morrison Thresh Medical Partners, Advanced Multi-Species Healthcare. It had become something of a sensation in the medical community, the first human-alien medical partnership in history. Patients came from across the galaxy to receive treatment from the team that had somehow combined the best of both medical traditions. The Galactic Medical Consortium, meanwhile, continued filing reports about their ongoing investigation into the whereabouts of their missing surgeon. Captain Noddle had been promoted to Senior Security Investigator, a title that came with impressive paperwork responsibilities and absolutely no additional competence. And somewhere in the depths of space, other alien species were learning an important lesson about humanity. We might look primitive from the outside, but we've got a few tricks up our sleeves, especially when it comes to medicine, ethics, and the fine art of turning your captors into your colleagues. After all, that's what makes us human. We don't just survive, we make friends with our kidnappers and convince them to switch careers. Not bad for a supposedly primitive species.